those are just a few of the suggestions of names for our new puppy, and I reckon we must have had every name under the sun.
Well, we've had well over 17,000 suggestions, so that's quite some number to sort through, and they've been very good ideas indeed, especially short, nice for a border collie.
Yeah, we had a few suggestions that we should call the puppy Pete or Noki, but we decided that at least one Pete and one Noki on the programme was more than enough.
Well, Ringo was a very popular name because the pup first appeared on Blue Peter when Ringo started. But unfortunately, we can't read out every name you sent in. There are literally hundreds of them. But having counted them, we did find there were 6 names that were more popular than all the others. Now, I'll tell you what they are in reverse order. Number 6 on the list was Ben, with 310 votes. The 5th name was Rex, with 345 names, and the 4th name was Nip, or Nipper, with 518.
Well, Nip was suggested because on the first programme that the puppy appeared on, it took a large nip out of John's ear.
I think we should call him Fang, really, shouldn't we? And now, for the last 3, here they come. With 654 votes is Pip, and with 696 votes, bringing it to second place is Flash, and finally, here we are, with 1,035 is the name of our new puppy, which is, there it is, Shep. So there you are, Shep. I now here name you Shep. It's better than Pop, isn't it? Yes, and you're good. He's gorgeous. Well, actually, a lot of Border Collie champions have been called Shep, so let's hope that sometime in the future this will become a champ,
yeah,
or at least win a couple of cups.
Have a proper name for him at last.
Yes, it is, and thank you very much for sending in all your ideas. It was very interesting seeing them.
He's nearly gone to sleep, hasn't he? I think he's going to snore soon. Well, I think Shep is settling down to his new life here extremely well. And I thought you might like to see what happened when I took him home for the very first time. Of course, it was before you'd chosen a name for him, so I was still having to call him Pop, 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 Pop.
Here we are. Look about. This is home.
Hey? There we are. There we are. There was plenty to explore and a lot to show him, so I started with his bed. I've made it from a cardboard box with a good comfy blanket inside.
You'll be good. You stay there. I'll be back in a sec.
He took to it straight away, and while he settled down, I went outside to finish off a special puppy run I'd built for him. My house is right in the country, and there's no fence round the garden, so until he's been trained to come when he's called, it's safer for the puppy to stay in the run.
Something's wrong there. I shouldn't be in here. You should be in here. Come on, boy. Come on. Here we are. Here you come. Here you come. Come on. What a good boy. What a super jump, wasn't he? You stay there. There's a good boy. Don't go away. Right. Mind your nose. There we are. I'll get you some water, okay?
I wondered what his reaction to the run would be, but I needn't have worried. He made himself at home.
Come on, boy. Here you are. Water. There you are.
While he was having his drink, Pete and Petra arrived.
Johnny, I'm here.
When Petra first met our new pup in the studio, she didn't take much notice of him. But out in the garden, she gave him a great welcome and a couple of growls just to keep him in his place.
Yes, Petra.
What's that then?
There we are.
Wow.
Right. Yes, isn't she nice?
The odd growl from Petra was quite natural. It's just her way of showing who's the boss and who's the biggest. They seemed to get on very well, so I thought I'd try putting our puppy on the ground.
Here we are. Here we are, Petra. There's a good one.
Oh, it's the puppy that's growled.
I'll let her off the lead. I thought it was safer. There you go. Come on, Petra.
It was splendid to know that Petra and our new puppy were going to be friends. It wasn't long before Petra started showing off and was belting up the hills, while our little pup was doing his best to follow. Pete and I were delighted to see both dogs enjoying themselves. Petra wasn't a bit jealous, and the puppy was obviously very happy with his new surroundings.
Come have a drink.
I'm going to carry on making a great fuss of Petra. Hey, she's really very jealous of this other pup, aren't you? So you're not left out, really. There you go. Go on and crawl under the floor. That's it. And now we've got a story about some buried treasure, and this is it. It was dug up in an old house in Derbyshire, or from the garden of the old house, by three brothers, Simon, Paul, and Martin Howarth. Hello, boys.
Hello.
Now then, Simon, how did you find this?
Well, we were digging a bank and Dad asked us to level the bank down.
And
And Martin struck it with his pick. And
Oh, you actually found it, Martin.
Yes.
Would you like to tip it up for us so we can see it properly? Do you know how heavy it is?
10 pounds.
Well, in fact, it's inside the earthen pot there. There are lots of bits of silver. And in fact, these little bits are the edgings, they're cuttings of the edges from old coins. You can see how curly they are there. Did you know what they were, Paul, when you first dug them out?
I thought they were milk bottle tops.
Yeah, they do look a bit like that. How did you find out exactly what they were?
Took them down the garden and washed them.
And you knew straight away? You could tell?
Well, from the inscription on the coin.
Did you ask anyone to verify what they were?
I rang up the Derby Museum and came out that evening.
Did they tell you the date of the coins?
Well, we found out ourselves from reading the inscription.
What are they?
Elizabeth, Charles, James, 17th century.
What mostly? Charles and James, mid-17th
Well,
century?
there's quite a few of Elizabeth.
So it's quite a mixed bunch, in fact. It's a very exciting find. Do you know how many coins there were, Simon?
we made 30 and it was 10 ounces, so we think there's about 15 to 1600.
That's quite a lot. Was there anything else in the pot?
And there's some ants and Martin got stung.
Did this sting you badly?
No.
Not too badly. Well, the value of the silver in here that three boys found is about £100. Are you going to be allowed to keep it, Paul?
Well, we're going to have an inquest on that.
What's the inquest for?
See where it's treasure trove.
Will you get something for it, though, whatever?
Well, it'll then be property of the Crown, and we get a reward for finding it. It might be that.
Whether you're
or
allowed to
value
keep
on
it or whatever, congratulations on a really splendid find. And if you're wondering why on earth anyone would want to cut the edges off old coins, well, it was really quite a common crime in the 17th century, and it was quite easy to do, because the old coins then were quite odd shapes, particularly like this one here. So if a piece was clipped off this, no one would really notice. Then the bits of silver could be saved and sold. Very ingenious crime. But this hoard, anyway, that the boys found, isn't the only one that was found in their village. Some more of the thieves' ill-gotten gains can be seen to this very day in the most unusual place. It's in Alderwesley Village Church, where once a month the communion plate is brought out.
Well, this silver chalice and the communion dish and the alms dish were made 120 years ago from silver clippings exactly like the ones that Simon, Paul and Martin dug up. They were found in 1846 by some workmen who were digging up the roots of an old tree, and they found this jar full of £8 worth of silver clippings. Well, eventually it was melted down and made into these three pieces for the church. Well, nobody's quite sure who the thieves were who buried the jars in the first place, or why they never came back indeed to collect them. But there is a legend in the village that at one time there used to be a cottage on the site where the jars were found, and that the people who lived in that cottage were hung for coin clipping. Well, it is only a legend, but the penalty for coin clipping in those days was indeed hanging, so it could be the right explanation for why the thieves never came back again. But of course it is a crime that could never be repeated again today, because our coins now are not pure silver, and they're so well shaped with milled edges that of course if you were offered one that had got a bit chipped off it, I'm sure you'd notice immediately, and of course you would never accept it.
Actually, it's rather interesting, that, because over the past 2 years I've dug out some treasure in my garden.
Have you? Is it worth anything?
No, it's not so much treasure, it's junk. It's worth about five pence the whole lot. But I'll tell you what, I'll bring it in on Monday, because it is quite interesting. Now, on our expedition, Blue Peter flies north while Val was travelling back in time, discovering about the Bronte families on the Yorkshire moors. Pete and I were flying up to the Arctic Circle in northern Norway. It's a lonely part of the world. Not many people live up there even today. But there are some people who've lived there for thousands of years, and they're the Lapps, who are famous for their reindeer herd. Well, we set off about 5 o'clock one morning because the Lapps live right up in the mountains, hundreds of miles from the nearest town. And we were very surprised after we'd been travelling for about an hour or two to find ourselves in a queue. It was a queue of cars, all waiting for a ferry.
Morning.
Oh, good morning.
You want tickets now?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
19.
19.
40 persons.
There's no queue jumping here because everyone's given a number. With 46 cars ahead, we settle down for a long wait.
Yeah, we're there. We've got to get to... The ferry wasn't very big, but when the cars in front started to move, we began to feel we'd a chance of getting on board.
The captain himself supervises the loading, and I thought he was coming over to say we'd got to wait for the next boat. But we were in luck. There was room for just a few more.
The passengers have to get out while the cars are being loaded. It's a safety precaution, and the rules kept very strictly on the fjord steamers. Looking down the gangway, there really didn't seem to be enough room for our car with 46 vehicles on board already. But the method of stowing the cars is amazing, and parking was a real driving test for Johnny.
Yeah, it's a really tight fit there, John. You feel like going for a walk?
How do I get out? Hang on, I'll see if I can. We're moving. I've forgotten the handbrake. Hang on. That's it.
That captain certainly knew his job. He packed the cars like sardines, and there wasn't an inch of space wasted. All the same, I was glad to be out. I hadn't fancied staring at the steering wheel the whole way across.
These ferries cross the deep fjord water several times a day. Even though you're only on board for 20 minutes, there are cafes and lounges just like a cross-channel steamer. But we went on deck because we wanted to see the fjord.
There were mountains all round, and there was plenty of other traffic too. The ferries are vital here, as up in the Arctic most of the supplies come by road. The cars and lorries can cross the mountains all right, even in winter, but supplies would be stopped stone dead at the fjords if it wasn't for the ferry boats. At the other side, there's no time wasted. Within 5 minutes, all the cars were unloaded. We'd been travelling for 3 hours already, though it was still only breakfast time, but we got a long way to go yet, if we were going to meet up with any laps. We knew we were getting warm, or cold rather, because we'd reached the Arctic. But we were getting a bit anxious because there wasn't a lap in sight. Then we got our first clue.
The peculiar noise seemed to be coming from the valley, and we were determined to track it down.
It was getting louder and louder, and then we spotted them. Laps, 2 men yelling their heads off.
The Laps still dress like their ancestors in thick coats embroidered in bright colours, and they make themselves superb boots to keep out the Arctic cold.
This curious singing is called yoiking, and nobody else in the world yoiks except the Laps. It's their special way of calling to their reindeer, and as they didn't stop when we walked over, after a bit we thought we might as well join in. They were singing a sort of folk song in their own Lap language. We couldn't sing the words, but it didn't seem to matter.
Yoiking really works. I soon spotted the reindeer gathering. They were a couple of 100 yards away, heading up the mountain, so we all set off after them, yoiking as we went.
Their super dog came too. He's a Samoyed, which the Laps breed specially to herd the reindeer.
Reindeer provide the Laps with milk and meat, fur for their clothes, and horns for their tools. They're as important as cows are to us, so they work hard to look after them. These animals don't live in fields because there aren't any. They graze in summer on the young shoots of the trees, but they soon eat everything they can reach, so the Laps have to round them up and move them on to find more food. The stragglers moved back to the herd when they heard the yoiking. It's important to keep the reindeer together because they're valuable animals, and the Laps sometimes have to walk miles rounding up the strays.
And we put in a good few miles helping to move the herd. Nobody seemed to be getting tired, but Pete and I were beginning to wonder how much further we were going, because all the yoiking drove the reindeer up the mountain again, right up beyond the snow line. Even in summer, there's quite a lot of snow still lying, but the reindeer's broad hooves support them, and they can race over it. The whole herd had gathered now, hundreds of them, and they followed their leaders right over the ridge and down to new pastures in the valley below. They'll graze here for a day or two, scattering everywhere until it's time to yoik them together again and move on. After all that yoiking, we were pleased when we were invited back to the Laps' home. Most of the time they live in modern houses, but when they're following the reindeer, the men build these mountain huts.
Inside, it was like a Red Indian wigwam. It was surprisingly big. There were furs to sit on, and it was marvellous after the Arctic cold to be able to warm our hands at the open fire, where a big chain hangs down for the cooking pot.
The smoke goes out through a hole in the roof, but not all of it. There was quite enough left to make our eyes water. But everyone was very friendly, and there were all sorts of questions we'd like to have asked.
It's very difficult when you can't speak Latin. The china mug and packets of sugar are signs that the Lapps' way of life is changing. They have cars and refrigerators in their permanent homes. But inside here, some things haven't changed for thousands of years.
Really sweet, isn't it? Oh,
It's a novel.
it is, isn't it? Yeah. Sharp as well.
Yeah.
Don't cut the cup in half.
Oops.
Cheers. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. That's good coffee.
The Lapp who lent me his knife gave us another surprise. We were just saying to each other how good the coffee was when he suddenly spoke English.
Yeah, the best coffee is made on this.
The best coffee is on the fire.
On the wood, yeah.
His name was Eric, and he was able to tell us how the soft white furs are kept for sleeping and the coarser black ones are for the floor. Unlike their ancestors, the Lapp boys go to school now, so they too may grow up to speak English. They're part of modern Norway, but all summer, when school is over, they live with their fathers in the traditional way that hasn't changed for thousands of years. They learn how to build the houses with their wooden frames, skins and turf walls, how to catch fish and cook them on an open fire, and how to live like wanderers, as the Lapps have always done when they follow the reindeer over the frozen mountains beyond the Arctic Circle.
If you're keen on competitions, you might be interested to know that one of the biggest competition crazes ever was started by this nursery rhyme, Hickory Dickory Dock. As you can see, it's got 5 lines, which is unusual because normally a verse would have 4 lines, and it's totally nonsensical. And a rhyme written like this is called a limerick. Well, the name Limerick comes from a town in Ireland, and 150 years ago, there was a popular song written about the town, and it was written in this nonsensical style. And one of the first books ever of limericks that was published was called A Book of Nonsense. The author, Edward Lear, was actually a serious painter, and you may wonder how he came to write a book of nonsense. Well, it all started when he was working in the country mansion of the Earl of Derby, doing coloured paintings of the Earl's collection of parrots. As well as parrots, the Earl also had a lot of grandchildren, and Edward Lear somehow had to keep them amused as well. So he started writing his limericks, and to go with each one, he drew a little sketch.
There was an old man of the coast who placidly sat on a post, but when it was cold, he let go his hold and called for some hot buttered toast.
There was an old lady whose folly induced her to sit on some holly, whereon by a thorn, her dress being torn, she quickly became melancholy.
Well, the Earl of Derby's grandchildren thought these were great fun, and when the Book of Nonsense was published, so did lots of other people. And limerick writing became very popular. Lots of great writers turned their hands to writing limericks. And W.S. Gilbert, who wrote the words in all the Gilbert and Sullivan operettas, he wrote one that didn't even rhyme.
There was an old man of St. Bees who was stung in the arm by a wasp. When asked, does it hurt, he replied, no, it doesn't. I'm so glad it wasn't a hornet.
But it was only in 1907 that limerick writing really caught on. 2 London magazines, famous magazines, each week ran a competition for the best limericks, and hundreds of thousands of people entered for them. It was rather like doing the football pools nowadays. The entrance fee to join the competition was only 6pence, and people used to buy the 6-penny postal orders like this. And in fact, in 1907, the sales of 6-penny postal orders went up from 100,000 a month to over 1.25 million a month. So you can see just how popular the competitions were.
And that's why we thought making up limericks would be a super bloopy to competition, because they're dead easy to do, and the end result can be extremely funny. And you also find on the first line, it usually refers to a person or a place. For example, I've got one of a fellow Yorkshireman. There was a young seedsman of Leeds who swallowed 6 packets of seeds. In a month, silly ass, he was covered with grass and couldn't sit down for the weeds.
And we've made one up about John, too. There was a young fellow called Noakes who was famous for terrible jokes. But when it was known that the jokes weren't his own, he was run out of town as a hoax.
It's all true. And what we want you to do is to get your thinking caps on and see if you can think of a really good limerick of your own. Now, the limerick should have some sort of story, 2 good rhymes, and always a funny or nonsensical last line. But the one that we want you to send in has got to be all your own work.
Yes, whatever you do, you mustn't send us one in that comes from a book. Now, what we want you to do is to put your limerick on a piece of paper, put your name, your age, and your address, and send it off to this address. Blue Peter Limerick, BBC Television Centre, London W12, 7RJ. I'll say that again for you. Blue Peter Limerick, BBC Television Centre, London W12, 7RJ. The closing date for the competition is a week next Monday, which is October the 4th. And as usual, we'll be dividing the competition up into 3 age groups, the 7s and unders, 8, 9s and 10s, and 11s and overs.
And there will be first, second and third prizes in all sections, and lots of runners-up prizes as well.
And part of the top prizes will be to have the best limericks put into a book and published. So you never know, you might find your limerick in print with your name beside it.
Right, go to it. Limerick writers, have a limerick about anything. Your hometown, your teacher, your pet. How about your granny, eh? Well, we've had something to do with gardening today in the studio. Now we're about to have something to do with hammering, because Pete's just gone over the other side and he's about to hammer a nail into a block of wood.
It's a 4-inch nail. It's made of steel. And to bash it in like that, although it doesn't take a tremendous amount of effort, it does take a fair bit of time. But if you've got quite a few of these to do, well, you could end up feeling quite tired. So you can imagine that if you've got several hundred of these nails to put into some wood, then you could well do with one of these. It's an industrial pneumatic power nailer, and it works off compressed air. And to load it, all you have to do is open up this box here and drop a string of nails into it, which are held together with a sort of sticky tape. You drop that in, it's rather like loading a machine gun, and in fact it works like one too, because the nails are then fed down this slot here to the firing position, which is there, and all I have to do to make it operate is to press this trigger here and then bounce the safety catch along the piece of wood I want to nail. So, like this. And you can see straight away 6 very firmly embedded nails in the block of wood. Well, this machine's supposed to operate at 120 nails a minute. So to see exactly how fast it is, I've organised a little bit of a competition over here with Johnny. I've got a couple of crates. Each need their lids nailing on. What we're going to do is nail 2 sides of the crate each. I'm going to use the power nailer on this one.
Hammerhead Noakes is going to use a hammer, and I'm going to lick him, I'll tell you.
But
Right.
John does have the advantage, as you can see there. He's got his nails already started. They're in the wood. All he's got to do is knock them down with a hammer.
Ready?
Let's see who's fast.
Ready, Mark, say go!
I finished. What's keeping you?
Well, my nails, actually. I've got 3 and one's bent and one didn't go all the way.
Not very good, is it?
me.
Well, I think this proves that the power nailer certainly makes hard work very easy.
You got 'em all.
Yeah, it's
There's
beautiful.
Shep.
Oops, I'm going to
Well,
move this way.
we'll be back again on Monday, and if you'd like to make a really glamorous piece of doll's furniture for your doll, I'll be showing you how to make a 4-poster bed.
Oh, which reminds me, talking of beds, we're going to try and get 17 people into one.
So you can see whether we can succeed or not on Monday.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.